Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful, for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with my colleague and friend, Bruce McCurdy. Welcome, Bruce.
Morning, David.
So, Bruce, the minutes are ticking down until the Zack Kassian hearing. Bruce, there hasn't been a hockey issue that has inflamed the fan bases of Edmonton and Calgary like this in decades. Is that fair to say? Go ahead. Is that fair to say?
Inflamed, eh? And burning oil. Yeah, it's hot out there. Man, there was some wicked interaction between fan bases on Twitter yesterday with some real silliness.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say both sides, but you know which side I'm going to line up on.
Yeah. It was like the Dothraki clashing with the army of the dead. I'm not going to say which was which. Didn't turn out well for either of them in the end. So Bruce, we're talking about the incidents, the number of altercations between Zack Kassian and Matt Tkachuk on Saturday night. I'll just run through them. The first one happened in the first period. It's what I would characterize as Kassian's coming around the net and he gets a charging blindside hit, which was arguably a hit to the head, especially on repeated views on the video clip. This is something that both of you and I didn't see when we first commented on it on Saturday night after the game, but it looks like a hit to the head. The second incident is another charge, 4 or 5 hard steps, and then Tkachuk throws his body around and slams into Kassian. This precipitates Kassian throwing about 20 punches, between 5 and 20 punches. I didn't count them.
Over 5.
Well over 5 at Tkachuk as he refuses to fight, and this breaks hockey code of honor when he turtles. He's famously being called the turtle or turtle chook. And my favorite is the turtle with the K in it, Tkurtle, by Oilers fans. Now the turtle, and then there's a third hit which I haven't seen. Did you see it?
Yeah. I just looked at the third hit as well.
So Kassian has a hearing today. It's likely he's going to be suspended. I think the NHL has looked at Turtlechuck's hits and says that they were legal hits essentially. So Bruce, we both have changed our mind on it after watching the clips, and I'll let you go first because your turnabout is more radical. I was kind of defending Kassian a little bit because I hate the way Tkachuk plays the game, and I just thought he had gone beyond it, and it was time someone clocked him.
Yeah. Well, I was mad at Kassian after the game for losing his composure in a tie game in a crucial battle for first place in the Pacific.
All fair.
And taking penalties that hurt the team. And I do still agree with Dave Tippett's take of taking a number. Not that anybody needs to take that guy's number. I think they all know who he is. But I was in the podcast post game. I was ripping Kassian for responding to clean hits, and they were, I guess, technically legal since both of the main 2 hits, the referees were standing right in the corner looking right at it, and they both, I don't know, I mean, it's like the referees in Stampede Wrestling that somehow missed Tiger Tommaso pulling the foreign object out of his trunks at the key moment in the fight, but they both missed these plays. And I don't like it when media people get it wrong. Well, this time I'm mad at myself because I got it wrong. Those were dirty hits. And whether they were legal or not, or permissible, they crossed the line.
That first hit, how is that?
Crossed the line, and in both cases, Kassian was engaged with a Calgary defender, Mark Giordano, in both cases, in fact, all three cases, behind the goal line. And as Kassian was making his play on the puck, in both cases, Tkachuk launched from above the face-off dot, took 4 to 5 strides, and hammered Kassian from the side, basically blindsided him while he was engaged with another player. That's what Rafi Torres got in trouble for all those times. Was he would venture go where wingers don't go, which is below the goal line, to hammer an opponent. And in each case, in all three cases, Tkachuk took 4 or 5 healthy strides, hard strides, and hammered Kassian as as hard as he could. And the first one in particular, like he got him. Calgary fans will all say, well, he hit him in the shoulder. That's why his head only whiplashed. It wasn't a headshot. It was merely whiplash. But he glanced and he got him basically right in the side of the neck as Kassian was making a play on the net. And that was brutal. Like how it's not a penalty and how the league can look at it and say, oh, that's fine. I mean, they're asking for some NHL player to get his head taken clean off if they're not going to crack down on that kind of crap.
And if this had happened to McDavid or Gaudreau in a game, if Kassian had thrown that hit on Gaudreau, he'd be suspended for it. There's no doubt about it. There's a double standard at play here because it was Zack Kassian who got hit, and because he's got it coming, he does have it coming.
Yeah, well, Kassian has been known to throw hits like that himself on occasion.
Because he's got it coming.
He gets called for it.
They thought, well, we'll let it go, but come on, like that first hit, that is such a dangerous hit. And we talk about Tippett taking the number. Kassian did take his number from that first hit. Yeah. He's thinking, I just got blindsided, hit to the head. If that happened, like that's why he lost it in retrospect. It wasn't the other hit. That was a hard hit. The second hit that precipitated the actual pounding of Turtlegate. But that first one, come on, like that, he had taken his number and he at that point, he had to do what he had to do. The NHL, listen, when the NHL fails, when they don't enforce their own rules, the players take the rules into their own hands. It happens repeatedly. It's going to happen again and again. They got to get it right. And I don't blame the officials necessarily. It was a fast play. Like these are all fast plays, right? Like it's hard sometimes to get it right, but that should have been, Tkachuk should have been thrown out of the game. He should have been gone. And after that
first in the box, he should have definitely should have been in the box. Yeah, the first one was pretty brutal.
That's intent to injure. He should be out of the game.
The NHL rulebook says charging shall mean the actions of a player who, as a result of distance traveled, shall violently check an opponent in any manner.
Well, what was
the infraction may warrant any severity of penalty or combination of penalties as the officials deem fit, including a major plus a game misconduct or suspension if the infraction results in injury to the opposing player. Now, fortunately, Kassian did not get injured. He does have he must have a strong neck, man, because that was not fun to watch. And watching it on replay a few times, I was surprised that he was able to continue from,
George Parros has got to get his head out of his ass. Get your head out of your ass, George Parros. Yeah, stop being a goof. You were a goof.
I wish they quit hiring goons for that job. Now, though you'd think that George Parros might have a little sympathy for Zack Kassian, given the cheapness of the 2 hits that he observed.
Well, what's interesting, Bruce, is the wide variety of players weighing in after this, and it's the whole spectrum of players, from Teemu Selanne on the the Dove wing to like rough and tumble players like Strudwick and Scotty Upshall and PJ Stock. And Ray Ferraro kind of in the middle, Curry Hirsch. Let's just go through some of what they're saying. Let's just quickly go through. Ray Ferraro, he says, I'm serious here. Aren't these the same hits Rafi Torres used to throw that the league eventually said were penalties? Any hit from above the goal line to a player coming from below. He's saying that's a over the line. Here's Teemu Selanne. And Kassian will face NHL hearing for protecting himself from his 2 dangerous hits. George Peros, not right.
Good for you,
Strudwick,
Timo.
Kassian will find his road dinners paid for more often by other NHL players for his work Saturday night. The old enemy is my friend situation. He says, you can't stop the antics of Tkachuk. He is wired that way. So you go after guys who aren't wired like that and can score for the Flames, make their night uncomfortable and skate away from Tkachuk. But I would have had the same reaction if Tkachuk had hit me like that. He is a left wing coming from the top of the circle in his own end to hit Kassian behind his net. He was looking for that hit. Scotty Upshaw, and he's talking about the first hit. It's clear as day Matthew Tkachuk has absolutely zero intention of making a hockey play. Again, for those of you who haven't played at this level other than Xbox, our new NHL states you must acknowledge there's a puck on the ice at some point. I had no idea most nights either, he admits. He says, he repeats, for those of you who haven't played the game, coming down your wing as a winger to hit a vulnerable guy on a wraparound is as dirty as it gets.
That's what Rafi Torres got nailed for. Exactly that, a couple times.
I know because I've done it lots. I deserved a punch in the face too. If this hit was on McDavid, 10 gamer minimum. So people aren't like the whole thing about whether Tkachuk's turtled or not. Like that's not the issue with the players, right? And Kassian beating up. It's not, they're not like whatever. Like they probably, like a lot of people give, and this was your point, they give Turtlechuck credit for not getting in the fight, drawing a massive, drawing a big penalty for Kassian, which could have been a bigger penalty. And it's interesting that it wasn't. They're all about that first hit, I think, and the second hit too. So it was just beyond the pale. I don't know. I just think there's disproportionate response from the NHL here. It's not fair. And the interesting thing, Bruce, Cassian's going to get, I think, a game or two. But I think this is going to stick with Tkachuk in a way that other plays haven't. That this really is kind of a defining moment in his career in a way that we haven't seen before. Like, that awful slew foot of Brandon Davidson and other hits he's done. Maybe I'm just saying this because I'm an Oilers fan. But this is Drew Doughty, that comment, but this is really cementing it in a big way. This is an incident which has got everybody's attention in the NHL right now. Massive attention in Canada. It's really going to cement his reputation, A, as a dirty player, and B, as a player who doesn't answer the bell, who's dishonorable. So both of those things are going to haunt Matthew Tkachuk, I think. And even though he's not getting suspended here, clearly, if he does this again, it's going to be leading. Everyone's going to be on the lookout for this now with him. Oh. And I think he's going to pay the price down the road.
Right. Well, all three hits, Kassian was below the goal line, and all three times Tkachuk, who I might remind, is a winger, who wingers virtually never go all the way down below their own goal line in the defensive zone. Came from the top of the face-off circle to run him below the goal line. The third one in the third period was a more legal play in the sense that Kassian turned away from Giordano, and Tkachuk had anticipated and was already making his run, as opposed to seeing him and then running him, seeing him vulnerable and then running him. But Tkachuk himself says, besides gloating about we'll take the power play goal and the win and enjoy the view from first place. How's that for an aggravating comment after the game? And now he says, not fighting was the right thing to do. If it was a different type of player out there, maybe, but it wasn't the right time to do it. I have a feeling half the people in the league wouldn't go with that guy. Yeah, and I have a feeling 98% of the players in the league wouldn't cheap shot that guy 3 times in one game either. Anyway. He's
a piece of work.
If you're going to respect, not want to go with the guy, then maybe don't light him up, in dirty fashion. There's a thought.
He better be careful, because there's some nasty players in the National Hockey League, and they don't like this guy.
Well, Zack Kassian being one of them.
Kassian being one of them, and what goes around comes around, and he's not such a fearsome player like Messier or Hal that other players are going to be thinking, oh, I can't take a run at him. He's going
to beat me up in a fight.
This isn't the end of it. This isn't the end of it, both from players and officials. And we'll see what happens next. Bruce, what suspension in a just world? What suspension should Zack Kassian get, and what suspension should Matt Tkachuk get for these incidents? You know, the combination of them.
Kassian's already paid a pretty dear price, with the penalties that he got, the power plays resulting in the game-winning goal that Calgary got, and the lack of power plays Edmonton got from the hits that he absorbed. And he's probably got a sore neck today, truth be told. Anyway, I fully expect him to get a game or two. If it's more than that, it's an outrage. And the league's exoneration of Tkachuk for what is widely seen by many experienced players as dirty plays, and more than one of them it's just a black mark on the Department
What would you give him?
Player Safety. What, Tkachuk or Kassian?
Tkachuk.
I would, yeah. I mean, I would give him charging penalties. That's the thing. They just didn't get called.
So now what you do, because they can go back retroactively, and if they miss a call, which happened, what would you give them? Okay, I give him 4 games
for the first hit.
I think it's for the first hit. I think, and then he should have I'm not so sure that the other hits were suspendable hits. The second hit probably was as well, but definitely the first hit is in a different category because of the targeting of the head, and it just strikes me as a bit more. It's more of a blindside hit.
Vicious, yeah.
Yeah, so I just think you got to crack down on that hit. You can't have players think I can make that hit. And I'd say 4 games. I think he's a first offender. It was maybe is he? Does he have other suspensions?
Yeah, he got suspended for. Didn't he get suspended for Doughty?
If he did, then I'm saying 5 games. If he's a repeat offender, 5 or 6 games, because that's a vicious hit. Very, very dangerous play. You want to take that out of hockey. And so if I didn't, let me just Google that so I can speak a little.
The same thing, yeah.
Tkachuk suspended for Doughty. That was the first, the precursor to Turtlegate.
Yeah.
Suspended 2 games. Okay, so he got 2 games for. So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to bump that up to. I'm going to add on 2 games to that and say 6. He should get 6 games. And I think Kassian, Bruce, like, there is mitigating circumstances, obviously, that the NHL missed a clear intent to injure him earlier in the game, and that would stop me from going higher than But I think if you're going to give Tkachuk 6 games, he didn't engage in the fight. When someone doesn't want to fight, I think you got to back off. And although he was enraged, he just kept going. I'm going to give him 2 games. I would give him 2 games. But this is an imaginary NHL where they actually take seriously flagrant acts on the ice. So 6 games for Tkachuk, 2 games for Kassian. What about you?
Well, Tkachuk here is from 2017. He got suspended for spearing a Detroit player. And that was already considered a repeat offender under the terms of the CBA. That was his rookie season, and he was already a repeat offender. And then the Doughty incident was after that. Like there's a timeline, there's a rap sheet on this guy, and it's too short compared to the kind of crap that he pulls on a regular basis. Because him skating free after this one, unfortunately, this is not a first. I certainly remember the first game at Rogers Place when he slew-footed Brandon Davidson brutally, and seriously impacted Davidson's career. He didn't get 2 minutes for that one either, but it was gross. And he just doesn't seem to have any barriers or any really respect for opponents. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because his dad was a very similar. I hated his dad as a player. He was number 1 on my list of guys in the NHL during his day of players that I actively disliked.
You know what the most infuriating thing, Bruce, was when they on the broadcast when they said that the player who has drawn more penalties than any other player in the NHL in the last. was Brady and then Matthew. Like
Yeah.
these two,
Weasels. His dad's the same way.
yeah.
And this is the guys I don't have respect for. If you're going to be a diver, be a diver. If you're going to be a tough guy, be a tough guy. If you're going to try and be both of those things, the hell with you.
How does he draw
Show a
more penalties than
spine.
Connor McDavid? What is wrong with you, NHL? Like you should
Yeah.
be thinking when you hear that and you're the NHL, you should be thinking, oh, we have got a problem. We are getting suckered. We are
Yeah.
getting suckered, and and we're not clamping down on the guys who really, who we're not giving the benefit to players like McDavid and the superstars, and we're giving it to a guy like
Giving it
Matthew
to
and Brady Tkachuk.
weasels. Yeah.
What is wrong with you, NHL? Like, what
Yeah.
a wake up call that is. Just that stat. I did like Bruce Connor McDavid coming to Cassian's aid, like
I
after
saw that.
that hit. That was good. Good for
He
Connor
was the
McDavid.
nearest teammate and he took a run at him, and
That
then
that's that was being
Cassian took
captain.
matters into his own fists.
Well, he was just, and you know what? Strudwick says he would have done that if I like in a beer league game. If someone hit me like that, I would go after them. Like that's just nuts. Of course, beer leagues no hit, so you don't expect to get hit, so it's all the worse. But even in the NHL where it's hit, you don't target people's heads, and that's
And you don't run
now
them
what.
from above the face-off circle to below the goal
Yeah,
line.
we know the impact of these hits on people's lives now, and for this to go on, this isn't just
Yeah.
BS hockey talk from fans mad that their player got hurt. Come on, this could have a serious impact on Zack Kassian going forward into his future. You don't hit people like that. Kachuk is part of the NHL's criminal element, and these are people that do things that go so far over the line that the law might have to start intervening. I mean, we've had players like this in the past who've done things like this, and and if he continues, he's going to be facing serious consequences and maybe bigger than he can imagine.
Yet I had a Calgary fan telling me that Cassian should be facing the law for aggravated assault or something. And you want to talk about headshots? I mean, Cassian tried to punch Kachuk in the head about 10 or 20 times, and he's answering for those actions now. But it wasn't as if that he was unprovoked.
What do you sign up
That's
for when you're an NHL player? You sign up to get hit. You sign up for a violent physical contact, but it's within certain parameters.
mhm,
Now, I think Kachuk's hit was way beyond those
mhm,
parameters, and that's why I'm saying that there needed to be a response for fighting. That's an interesting question, right? I
yeah,
think that within the history of the game, pretty hard to argue that fighting is outside the normal parameters of an NHL game. Now, there's this new trend of players not of turtling essentially when they get in a fight as a tactic, and it's started with the instigator rule, right? It's to take advantage of the instigator rule. You wouldn't drop your gloves, so the other guy would get the 2 minutes. So things are changing a little bit on that front. Maybe one day fighting will also be so far beyond the parameters of the game that you can make the argument that some kind of extra special judicial outside care that society has to intervene because the league won't intervene. But
yeah,
fighting's not
yeah.
there yet. But these kinds of hits, I don't know.
Well,
Sick.
there's been a truism about the game as long as you and I have been watching it, David, about the players policing themselves. And this was a pretty clear example of that. Now, maybe that's old 20th century thinking, and we're old 20th century guys, but this was clearly a case where uh, in the view of the one player, his opponent went too far, and he felt like he needed to tune him up. And so in the moment, I was going, "Oh, this penalty is going to hurt us," but uh, in the on the human scale of things, I mean, stuff happens. People respond when they get pushed beyond a certain limit, and that clearly happened here.
What pushed? I'm just looking at the last time someone was charged. Todd Bertuzzi was charged criminally. So
Yeah,
I'm not just making this up. This does happen, and I'm not saying the Kachuk's hit on Cassian actually crossed that line. I don't think it did, but it's the kind of incident that can
mm,
incite extra violence from Cassian, for instance, going over the line. It's just that's why the NHL has to crack down on it. But you do have now, and
uh,
because what was Bertuzzi mad about? He was mad
he
about a
was
guy
mad at
not
Steve
fighting
Moore. He was mad at Steve Moore, who hit uh,
the goalie.
no, Marcus Naslund Naslund was down on the ice on one knee, and Moore went out of his way to hip check him in the head and gave Naslund a concussion. And the next time the two teams played, which was like 2 or 3 weeks later, where he had a whole lot of time to think about it, Bertuzzi spent much of the game apparently trying to get Steve Moore, and when Moore wouldn't engage, he eventually hunted him down from behind, slugged him, and crashed and landed his full weight of his body on him and on the ice and broke Moore's neck. He never played again. Again, on Saturday night, Sunday morning, or whenever, I had a Calgary fan saying that what Kassian did was like what Bertuzzi did, which is ridiculous. It was nothing like that.
Bertuzzi was charged with criminal assault causing bodily harm. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 1 year probation and 80 years of community service. Marty McSorley for 80 hours, excuse me. And McSorley on Brashear.
Mm-hmm.
McSorley, I think, slashed him.
Yeah, I clipped him in the head with the stick.
Toppled to the ice unconscious, Brashear did. McMurtry
had a few charges against Philadelphia Flyers players in Toronto at one time.
Forbes.
Yeah.
McSorley was found guilty of assault with a weapon and was sentenced to 18 months probation. So again, I'm not. If I said earlier, like I raised within the context of this incident, that Tkachuk could be charged, I don't think that that's appropriate. In this case, he should be suspended by the NHL.
If Ralphie Torres didn't get charged, he's not going to get charged.
No, he's not going to. Obviously not.
But
it seems it's more like the Kassian kind of assault after a whistle, when a player's enraged, that the assault charges do come. It seems to be after the whistle stuff that is more likely to end up in it. So in some ways, the fan who was criticizing you and attacking you, he was right on a certain level. It's that kind of incident, but it would have to be, I think, significantly more than that. Although, I'll tell you what, if Zack Kassian had significantly injured Tkachuk, that would have been within, similar to the McSorley and Bertuzzi kinds of incidents, where these players who don't want to fight are ragdolled and injured. Anyway, it's a little bit off track, delving into that, but it's a kind of thing that comes up when I think what's caught our attention here, Bruce, is something's not right here, and something's gotten way off kilter here, way off kilter. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's the disproportionate response of the NHL, though, to the various incidents between the two players.
Yeah, well, if they want to tee up an old-fashioned war, the home and home between Edmonton and Calgary that's coming up in the near future will be high voltage stuff, I suspect.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It's not the 80s anymore, man. I remember the 80s. I attended a lot of those battles of Alberta, and the intensity in those games was ramped way up off the charts, with Calgary having a number of players, and Edmonton too, of course, but Calgary having players who enraged Edmonton fans, with Neil Sheehy being at the top of my personal list from those days. But Matt Tkachuk, on the other hand, unlike Neil Sheehy, Matt Tkachuk is a highly talented player, and he's got lots of ways to hurt you without being as cheap about it as he tends to go.
Can the Oilers bring back Mark Messier in a one-game contract? All right, Bruce, let's leave it there.
Yeah, Thanks. let's see what happens, David. And suspension will probably come down later today, or at least the announcement of whatever they've decided. But the fact that he has a hearing almost certainly means something is coming.
Yeah. Thanks for talking.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.